As someone that has been playing video games for almost all of my life, one of the things I look forward to are any new gaming presentations, since we get tons of new game reveals from it and all. It's also one of the reasons why I enjoy watching them more compared to other kinds, like tech keynotes for example. Tech keynotes are more professional and sanitized, since the purpose there is to showcase new upcoming tech, devices, and etc., while also informing some general business stuffs. Their audience for the most part consists of tech enthusiasts, mainstream audience, and companies, investors, and shareholders. They aren't really made to be fun in mine. Because of that, I think it's more boring to watch for me. Gaming presentations, on the other hand, are made to be catered towards gamers themselves as the primary audience, so that will be including me. They'll also then need to design the overall show to align with gamers' expectations for it, as well as to fulfill a main goal these presentations have: to raise awareness and promoting games to the public. Now, usually companies announce a variety of games inside of their presentations, though there are also some where it just showcases a single game to preview its gameplay features and the story of it more in depth. What makes gaming presentations more fun to watch for me, well, for the most part, is the combination of anticipating any interesting new games and any surprising reveals that we won't really expect, like either a new game from a dead series or even a remake of either a fan favorite title or a cult classic. It's like a Christmas present for gamers, a surprise box where we don't know what is the inside of it. It's basically also what makes us to keep looking forward to any showcases and presentations announced by any of the game companies, though especially presentations by the console makers themselves. You see, console makers have higher stakes and responsibilities to make their showcases the best they can be, since they have to promote and attract as many gamers of their games and their own systems and platforms. The console business is an extremely competitive field after all, with competitors trying to outdo one another by seizing any opportunity from anyone's mistake. And if one of them did make one major mistake, it can be disastrous for them, especially during the period when they're on the build-up towards a launch of a new console hardware. The damage can even affect the sales and launch of the new hardware and can even affect the consoles that come after it. Case in point, like what happened to the Sega Saturn, Xbox One, and some more consoles in the past. These all then lead to the fact that usually showcases by the console makers are the biggest shows compared to other developers and companies. They feature the biggest and fanciest stages, they're the most watched online, and feature the most major announcements with many surprise reveals. I mean, with all of these, of course we're gonna be engaged and hype watching through them. This is especially the case during the crucial period when plenty of companies do their own presentations in the midst of the arrival of a next-gen hardware. They also happen to be my favorite period, as the atmosphere and hype feature some of my favorite kinds of presentations. It became like a must-see event for a lot of us, with the heat between companies, what next-gen games all will be like, and let's not forget about fake leaks as well. For me, however, it also stems a bit slightly from my own nostalgia, as my first exposure to it all was back in 2013, with the build-up and the reveal for the PS4 and the Xbox One, as they're at the time the next-gen hardware of consoles. A key memorable moment from that event has to be how Sony obliterated Microsoft after how they mishandled the reveal of the Xbox One.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't, like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
In addition, PlayStation 4 disc-based games don't need to be connected online to play.
So seeing how competitive not just the console makers themselves get, but also other developers as well in trying to edge over the other and getting all the attention and spotlight from each other, generates this hype and interesting atmosphere, making the whole thing somehow feels more of a spectacle. Although it did feel a bit of console warring between fanboys, some part of it is pretty insufferable.
Now we shit.
But for other parts of it, I do like the fact that it makes the overall gaming community engaged with the whole gaming scene. Made the whole thing feel really competitive between the console makers, either that's good or bad. But I do prefer it, since competition breeds excellence after all. This was especially true back then when companies will attend a lot of major gaming events and both have their presentations and booths set it up. It was all before COVID happened. Gaming presentations far back then started out to be similar with any tech presentations at the time, But as time passes on, the scale of the show grew bigger each year as it then finally became what we know more nowadays, as figuratively a spectacle of a gaming marketing campaign to generate as much hype as possible. They became some of the biggest events for us gamers, as a lot of those presentations were held concurrently during major gaming events like E3, Gamescom, PAX, TGS, or they will have their own event like the old PlayStation Experience, rest in peace, and BlizzCon, partly rest in peace. Now these events are mostly attended by gamers and normal people, but they're also attended by the media as well to do coverage for the whole event, as well as the press conferences that the companies have. So with a huge crowd of people that attend these events, it's also a big reason why these companies have their presentations here, so that they can showcase their games to a huge crowd of people, where they can also try some of the games available in their booths. Now the press conferences, however, a huge part of their appeal has to be just the sheer scale of it, being a showcase that is presented to a huge crowd of audience. To facilitate that is also the fact that a lot of these press conferences have the most extravagant and fancy stage set it up for it, with crazy LEDs, lightings, entrance music, and all those kind of jazz. If you think about it, it's not that quite different from a wrestling show. And add to that, these conferences are also being streamed live to people around the world. So really, it was just a grand time for gamers everywhere, with all of the game announcements, and people could even try to play shit tons of games right before they were released if they went to those gaming events, of course. Kinda sad though that I probably won't have the chance to go to E3 anymore, but more on that later. Now, at some point, the fact that each show got bigger as years goes on, there has to reach a point where the show became too big for them to keep producing, right? Like surely by the end of it, it's not sustainable, with how expensive it is to upkeep those elaborate stage setups, and renting the venues for their show for in the end is just an over-glorified marketing exercise. But during that time, one company did move away from doing those huge press conferences and move over to do more online digital direct show. I'm talking about Nintendo. You see, Nintendo during the early 2010s were struggling financially off by the disaster that is the Wii U, still a decent console by the way, and also the slow start of the 3DS, which had only got more traction in its mid-cycle. They already did start their direct show, but to save some expenses, they stopped attending gaming events and doing press conferences, and instead transformed their small Nintendo Direct show to what we know more of it nowadays as their own major digital showcase. They will also pre-record them as it is easier and cheaper to produce. And in the end, it turns out a lot of people still watch them, and it makes Nintendo easier to fully transition into doing their direct format presentations full time. I think there was only that one time where they did a stage show, and it was a presentation for the Nintendo Switch a few months right before its launch, though you can correct me on that. Some companies also started to dabble in the direct format, notably Sony with their State of Play shows, and has continued since as their own counterpart for the Nintendo Directs, though I'll bet at a smaller scale compared to their own major PlayStation showcase. One thing to note however, the State of Plays are usually slightly more polarizing compared to Nintendo Directs. After that, well, COVID hit the world by storm, people had to stay at their homes, and game companies were scratching their heads to prioritize with how they can continue to work on their projects, before even thinking about doing any kinds of presentations. But once they got everything in order, they then need to have a presentation to at least show to the public all of the games that they're gonna release. They might also be obligated by shareholders probably. Along the way however, there were two major things that happened. E3 is now dead because of the pandemic and mismanagements by the event organizer, the ESA, and in its absence was replaced by the Summer Game Fest, an event created by Geoff Keighley and the crew behind the Game Awards. Now in the present time, game companies have their own digital presentations which sort of follow the direct format by Nintendo. They also then have them either annually or a few times in a year, depending on whenever the company wants to do them. I think the only major live stage presentations are all the three Geoff Keighley events, the Summer Game Fest, Gamescom's opening night live, and then the Game Awards as the major events where we'll also get a lot of new game announcements. Though Ubisoft did a live stage presentation in front of a crowd audience in their forward show once, but I think the audience only consists of Ubisoft employees themselves, so I won't fully count them as one. The huge problem with all the Geoff Keighley shows is the fact that they all feel kinda the same. I mean, it should be obvious, right, with the same production team, but I kinda wish there would be more differentiation between them. While they have some great game announcements, all of the shows cater towards a more mainstream audience and are treated as such, which is another issue of mine with them. Because of that, the shows have some really lows that accompanies the highs, so don't come and expect a consistent amount of crazy game announcements. Like not even a completely out there kind of game that people will not really expect. For me, it has to be said that aside from Nintendo and Devolver Digital, though that one is for a different reason however, so far companies hadn't really been doing an amazing job in those online digital presentations. A lot of them feels boring and a slog to watch through. They've had some years of doing it, but there hasn't been any major improvements, I feel like. It's as if these online presentations are produced more as an afterthought. I mean, with Nintendo, I bet it has to be all the cumulative experience they had with doing their Nintendo Direct all those years ago, allowing them to do a good job in producing them nowadays. But for other companies, I feel like they could have learned some things or two from Nintendo in making their presentations more interesting to watch. Like having a more enthusiastic narrator that sounds like they're interesting with what they're showing.
This game's a real toot.
Arr! A swashbuckling adventure returns.
You're already fit?
Take notes, state of place. After that, make developers talk about a summarized list of interesting things about their games instead of dragging it out too long, which happens a lot in these showcases. Even though it's probably better if they just keep it short and have a steady pace for the show to keep us basically engaged throughout it. I don't know, it might be my age and nostalgia and jadedness here talking about, but I genuinely feel out of my judgment that game presentations nowadays aren't really quite as hype as they used to be. That might slightly be a great thing I guess with games now not being overhyped as much as it used to be, like what happened to Watch Dogs and Cyberpunk. But at the same time, I feel like the side effect is that showcases aren't quite as exciting as they used to be. Like you won't miss out on much if you decided to skip on watching them and just wait for a summary of all the news and announcements that came out of it. I guess that has always happened for even those huge press conferences back in the day, but I do feel like it's even more so now. And for me, that partly stems from multiple reasons on what now makes gaming presentations not that exciting anymore. The first being that there are no crowds. Aside from all the Geoff Keighley shows where now they have crowds in them, which is great, and Ubisoft that one time, I think having crowds for the show is nice as they're able to elevate the atmosphere of it, making them bigger and feel more lively in a sense. Because when they're just talking straight right in front to a camera instead of a huge crowd of audience, it feels so devoid of any human touch and feels so lifeless. Imagine if the Snake Eater remake announcement from last year's PlayStation Showcase was announced to a huge crowd of audience. I bet you the announcement would have been more hype than it actually is. Now we're like within just a few days and weeks away in the build up towards the Summer Game Fest, so I hope by then there'll be more crowds in the upcoming showcases so that this will be a non-issue. My second problem is that a lot of the trailers in these presentations aren't that interesting, as a lot of them are edited in a sort of similar format and sequence, making them feel uninspiring. Added to the fact that plenty of these showcases are designed to just have trailers after trailers with barely any breaks between them. It makes it even more of a slog to watch through, to be honest. I do like at least in Nintendo Directs, the narrator helps to break down and makes the game sounds more interesting with how they're describing it or more so selling them, making it easier and more engaging to digest in my opinion. I also see in these showcases that sometimes developers likes to yap too long about their games. I'm sure they're passionate about their works, but for the most part it's better if they just keep it short and slightly more brief, as otherwise it kinda breaks the pacing of the show and just makes me want to tune out even more. Especially if they even start to talk about things outside of the game. Lastly, for me, I have an issue especially with the console makers' showcases. Now it's already a bit difficult keeping track with all the major gaming showcases, right? What annoys me even more is when the console makers have their major showcases not at major gaming events like the Summer Game Fest, which is the supposedly annual big event that replaces E3, but to have either days or weeks before or even after the event, for example. It's really annoying for me, especially since before that, the console makers will have their major presentations inside of the whole E3 event, for example, which only spanned through a week. So all the news from the event will sort of come out all at once. Now it's a bit of a mess to keep track of everything. I could even miss out on cool games that I wasn't paying attention to. Also, I do feel like the console makers nowadays just feel like they aren't as competitive with each other anymore. Of course, when they're struggling, they won't face their competitors straight hat on. Nintendo does their own thing and Microsoft as well, though let's just say that they brought it to themselves to where they are now from many previous eras. Though from this, it's been nice for the smaller devs and third parties as well, since they can either have their own showcases or be part of presentations made for smaller games or to support the smaller devs. Meaning that they don't need to be reliant on the console makers' presentations. Nice in terms of the business side of things and also the opportunity it gives them to be able to market their games on their own terms and have the spotlight where previously they might not be able to have. Which also leads me to the rest of the industry, because I guess the benefit overall now is that showcases can be more sustainable in terms of audience growth and money. They don't need to pour shit ton of money for having a huge fancy stage presentations anymore, as now everything can just be live streamed or posted on YouTube. It might even reduce the amount of games being overhyped to oblivion, I guess. Though this statement might bite me in the ass in the future. At the same time, I do still prefer the old press conferences. And I don't know, maybe we'll see them again in smaller capacity perhaps in the future, or even in the upcoming days and weeks leading up to this year's Summer Game Fest. Even with game presentations nowadays might not be as exciting to watch as it used to be for me, it still probably won't stop me from playing any new games coming out that piqued my interest. Just wish that at least some improvement can be seen throughout all the showcases we had throughout the last few years. Who knows by the time the Summer Game Fest arrives? For all I know, game companies might have made their shows more engaging and fun to watch.